Kentucky and Duke are two of college basketball's bluest blue bloods, but neither are the favorite to come out of the South region, and for good reason.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Wednesday, one day before the true madness of college basketball and the NCAA Tournament begins. Welcome in, folks, to the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade here at the place to get college basketball content, not just in March, not just in February, not just in November when the season starts. We're with you every single day. Special shout out to those everyday listeners who are with us every day as well. Isaac, we got a fantastic show today. Just like for those of you who listened to Tuesday's episode, we went through both of the regions on the left side of the bracket. Today, we are covering the South and Midwest regions, Purdue and Houston, your top seeds. We're going to get to them, all of the matchups here. Before we get to that, though, I want to shout out our Discord channel. If you have not joined our Discord channel, you should do it just to talk college hoops with us 24/7. But we also have a bracket challenge. Shout out to Boiler Blake, one of the members in our Discord channel who has created. If you want to join the link, it is in the show notes. You can click there, join our bracket challenge as we get into the tournament and all of the games starting on Thursday. We did have a couple results to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit later about Virginia kind of forgetting to show up for their basketball game against Colorado State. That was a tough watch, but also want to give a shout out to Wagner for advancing their first ever NCAA tournament win for the Seahawks. They only have 7 scholarship players, and yet they find a way to get a big lead against Howard. Howard almost came back and took the W away from Wagner, but they managed to secure it 71-68. They will play North Carolina in the first round on Friday, I believe, will be that game between Thursday between Carolina.
By the way, Andy, FDU last year, play in out of the NEC, Purdue. Watch out, Tar Heels. You might be in trouble.
You never know. It could absolutely happen. But Isaac, want to talk about the South region right now, where we don't have a play-in 16 game. We got Longwood taking on Houston in that game. But what I want to do is I'm going to read through all of the games, the times, where you can find them on TV if we got that information. Take a look at what the South region looks like. And then, Isaac, we're just going to banter about our favorite matchups in this region. We're going to talk about some sleeper teams that might make a run and some of our favorite players to potentially watch in this region. We'll start, of course, as I said, with Houston, Longwood, number 1 versus number 16. Games on Friday in Memphis at 9:20. Houston favored by 24.5. Always fun to see those FanDuel lines for those 116 matchups. 8-9, far closer, as you would expect. Nebraska versus Texas A&M on Friday in Memphis. That game will be before that Houston-Longwood game. Nebraska favored by 1.5 in that one. 5-12, Wisconsin, James Madison, Friday in Brooklyn at 9:40. Wisconsin favored by 5.5. That game will be on CBS. Your 4-13, Duke, Vermont. Blue Devils here taking on the Catamounts on Friday in Brooklyn. Pretty close to home, frankly, for both of these teams, quite honestly, to be played in Brooklyn at 7:10 on Friday. Duke favored by 11.5. Texas Tech, NC State, battle of 2 Power 6 teams there out of the ACC and the Big 12, of course. Thursday in Pittsburgh for that one, 9:40. Texas Tech favored by 5.5 as well. That game will be on CBS, along with the Kentucky-Oakland game. That game is Thursday in Pittsburgh at 7:10. Kentucky favored by 13.5 as the 3 seed over 14-seeded Oakland. Then we got Florida, the 7 seed. They will be taking on the winner of Boise State and Colorado. Very fun play-in game there that I'm incredibly excited about. Either of those teams should give Florida a bit of a run for their money there. That'll be a fun one Friday in Indianapolis. 4:30. There's no line for that one, obviously, as we do not know who Florida is going to play yet. That game will be on TBS. Finally, Marquette, Western Kentucky, 2 versus 15, Friday in Indianapolis, 2 p.m. Marquette favored by 14.5 for that game on TBS. Isaac, which of these matchups, lots of fun ones here, as there always kind of are in these regions, but which of these matchups kind of stand out to you as the one you're most interested in, excited by, intrigued by, whatever it may be?
Andy, it's funny. I'm going to do this, I feel like a couple of times, but Florida against either Boise State or Colorado, which will be one of tonight's slashy games. really is interesting to me. You and I both believe that Boise State is underseeded here as a 10 if they're the team to win. But Colorado, I think by sheer talent is underseeded as a 10, but based on results is kind of right where they deserve to be, unfortunately. But Cody Williams, a stud freshman, lottery pick. KJ Sampson, one of the best point guards in the country. Tristan Da Silva, probably a first-round pick this year. So, Andy, just really good competition either way for Florida, who will obviously be missing Micah Hanlogton. But even without Hanlogton, I love Walter Clayton Jr. and Riley Kugel and all these guys that they've got, both in the backcourt. Our guy Leif Tulane talks about he loves how Todd Golden's Florida team has 4 strong backcourt guys and 4 strong front court guys, although that's down to 3 now, as I just referenced. But I'm really excited to see, honestly, whoever wins that game tonight match up with Florida on Friday. Andy, what about you and your favorite matchup in the first round of this region?
Yeah, I'm going with the 5-12 here, Wisconsin, James Madison. And I talked about this on, I believe, our bracket breakdown show. My guess is that this will be the most popular 12-5 upset pick. Now, the national media is all over McNeese and Gonzaga. I've seen a lot of people picking that the Grand Canyon St. Mary's game as well. But I feel like Wisconsin, James Madison is going to be the trendy pick, in part because Wisconsin had a really horrendous stretch toward the end of the season. They rebounded since then, played well in the Big Ten tournament, knocked off Purdue in overtime. But the narrative around Wisconsin, I think in a lot of people's minds, it's going to kind of weigh heavy that they had that really bad streak late in conference play. Meanwhile, James Madison has kind of been on everybody's radar since the very beginning of the season when they knocked off Michigan State. Narratively, seeing them beat another Big Ten team, I think, is a story a lot of people are kind of consciously or subconsciously wanting to see. And just from a matchup perspective, not even from that narrative, I think it's an intriguing one. TJ Bickerstaff, really talented player for James Madison. Mark Byington, their head coach, I think is one of the best young coaches in college basketball. It's kind of a battle of tempo. James Madison plays at a top 75 tempo in the country, according to KenPom. Meanwhile, Wisconsin outside of the top 300. So going to see who can dictate the pace. I think that's going to be a huge part of this game. Can AJ Storr stay hot for Wisconsin if he keeps shooting well? That makes them a really, really tough team. But I'm excited to see if James Madison can continue to do it. I think we joked about this on the bracket breakdown. If you do pick James Madison and you pick Duke, then you get the Duke versus the Dukes. And that's just kind of a fun story there. So I'm excited about this game for a variety of reasons, not just the punny ones, although that plays a role as well.
Andy, we also need to talk about sleepers in this bracket. It's always fun to look at what teams could typically not a top 4, but anything 5 or lower, a team that, we could see win a couple games or even win the regional final and move on to the Final Four. So, Andy, I'll just send it right back to you. Who are you looking at for that team out of this South region?
I'm going with Colorado. We talked about that. They got to beat Boise State to even be into the region and get that chance against Florida. But this Colorado team is really talented, and they've been very inconsistent all season long. That's part of the reason they're in this play-in game. They've lost to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, or else they would have had, obviously, a more secure bid had that happened. But you mentioned it. Simpson, Da Silva, Cody Williams, Eddie Lampkin, I think, plays a big role for that team in the front court, particularly if they do advance past Boise State. Having Eddie Lampkin be able to clean up the glass against a Florida team missing Hanlogton, that feels like a big storyline to me. If Colorado can advance past Boise State, advance past Florida, I think they could give Marquette a serious run for their money. We'll see. Tyler Kolek is going to play. I continue to say oblique injuries don't just go away. I don't know that he will be at 100%, and even 80% or 85% for Tyler Kolek could be an issue. It's, again, with this really good guard room for Colorado, with Cody Williams presenting matchup nightmares for everybody. I'm looking out for the Buffs here. I think there's a chance that they can kind of exercise some of the challenges they've had earlier in the year and make a nice run here in March.
Andy, I'm going to go with NC State. They did not have a great regular season. They entered the ACC tournament at 17-14 overall, 9-11 in ACC play as the 10 seed. They had just lost 4 straight and 7 of 9. But Andy, we all know then what they did. Became just the second team ever to win a conference tournament via 5 wins in 5 days. And Andy, the other team to do that, also just kept riding that momentum all the way to the national championship, 2011, the Kemba Walker UConn Huskies team. Now, Andy, hear this. I in no way expect NC State to do that because there is no Kemba Walker on this team.
Yes.
But based on that very small sample size history, a team that suddenly finds something can kind of ride that momentum and keep going. To me, this is the DJ show. DJ Horn in the backcourt, DJ Burns in the front court. Michael O'Connell has found a new gear. Mo Diarra is rebounding everything in sight, set an ACC tournament record for rebounds. I mean, of course, when you play 5 games, I get that. Ben Middlebrooks is a nice backup for DJ Burns. Jaden Taylor, Casey Morsell are a little banged up, but if they're okay, they can pour it in as well. Really curious to see how NC State can keep riding momentum from the ACC tournament.
Want to close out the segment here before we get into the Midwest region in the second segment. But before we get there, I want to talk about some of the players to know. I'm just going to each pick one player that maybe people have heard of, maybe they've seen, but a guy who I think might kind of really make a name for themselves here in March. For me, I'm going to go with Keisei Tominaga at Nebraska. Really, really talented kid. They've nicknamed him the Japanese Steph Curry, 15 points per game, shooting a hair over 37% from 3. If you're a Big Ten fan, you have seen Tominaga. You have been victimized by Tominaga. He is incredibly talented. I love just watching. I just like watching him play. I like the way that he plays, the style, the speed, the ability to get to the rim. Of course, the pure outside shooting stroke that he has. If Nebraska can advance here, I think there's a chance that they can make some real noise. Obviously, they got themselves a really tough second round matchup with Houston. That's, again, assuming they get by Texas A&M. But I don't think they necessarily beat Houston, but that's a game a lot of people are going to have eyeballs on, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tominaga is some water cooler conversation for the next day. Let's put it that way.
I love it, Andy. I think this moment is all about picking players that are just fun and unique that people want to talk about. And I think Tominaga is a great example of that. I think also mine is as well. I just talked about NC State, but I want to shine a further spotlight on DJ Burns, their big man in the middle, who the last 2 seasons has been one of my favorite players in the entirety of NCAA basketball. Homie is 6'9", 275, one of the more unique big men in basketball. I think one of the reasons people will like him is just because of his heft and size, but also he just loves playing basketball. He's always smiling, always enjoying what he's doing. So much fun. Hopefully some of you saw him in that run last week in the ACC tournament. For a big man, he's got some of that beautiful footwork that you don't really expect to see from him. And what I love is that you really have to find unique ways to guard him, because if you single coverage him, he's going to just bully you into the paint and just drop it in. If you come double him, well, guess what? He's NC State's second leading assist man. And for my money's worth, their best passer. It's just he doesn't have as many opportunities as Michael O'Connell, who is the leading assist man. ACC championship, great example. 9 of 12 from the field, 20 points, and Andy, 7 assists as North Carolina could not figure out what to do with him. Check, you can't miss DJ Burns if you watch NC State play Texas Tech, but make sure you got eyeballs on him. All right, Andy, we're going to move from the South to the Midwest, where Purdue is right back on that 1 seed line. Will the Boilermakers be able to make it out of this region? Heck, will they be able to make it out of the first round, or will they suffer yet another early exit under head coach Matt Painter? Right after I tell you, this episode's brought to you by one of our brand new sponsors, Better Together. Are you tired of the same old daily fantasy grind, where you make a roster, you cross your fingers and you hope for the best, or losing on the last leg of your pick'em entry? Well, I'd like to introduce to you a better way. Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs over talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. You pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social DFS movement. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. It makes you realize that sure, DFS is fun alone, but like a lot of other things, it's better when you do it together. It also gives inexperienced players a more immersive way to learn about DFS without the fear of figuring it out on your own. So go ahead, download Better Together right now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember to use that code LOCKEDON, because winning alone is fun, but Andy, it's better together.
Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, folks. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what helps keep your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, Isaac, let's move down to our final region here of these 2 episodes, getting you ready for the NCAA tournament. We're talking about the Midwest region, where Purdue, the Boilermakers, are your top seeded team. A lot of demons that we want to see Purdue potentially exercise here. Obviously, as a team that lost to a 16 seed last year, we know the last time that happened was with Virginia back in 2018. They went to the championship the following year after losing to UMBC. Certainly didn't put up much of a showing this time around in 2023, but at least they didn't have that 1 seed pressure on them. Isaac, we're going to look at the games here in this Midwest region. Same type of thing. Talk about our favorite matchups, players to watch, etc. We got Purdue taking on the winner of the other play-in 16 game. That'll be Montana State versus Grambling. Purdue will take on the winner of that on Friday in Indianapolis, 7:25 on TBS. Obviously, no FanDuel line for that one yet. 8-9 there. The Aggies of Utah State taking on the Horned Frogs of TCU on Friday in Indianapolis. TCU favored by 4.5 for that game on TBS. 5:12 Gonzaga versus McNeese Thursday in Salt Lake City at 7:25 Eastern on TBS. Zags favored by 5.5 there. Kansas Samford, very intrigued by this game because of the Kevin McCullar injury. For those of you who missed this, McCullar will not play in the rest of the 2024 NCAA tournament. He's got some nagging knee injury stuff, has missed a handful of games already, including Kansas has lost to Cincinnati in the Big 12 tournament. So Kansas takes on Samford, the 13th seed, the Bulldogs, without Kevin McCullar. That game will be on Thursday in Salt Lake after the Gonzaga game. TBS, Kansas still favored by 8.5 despite not having McCullar for that one. 6:11 South Carolina versus Oregon Thursday in Pittsburgh, 4 o'clock on TNT. South Carolina, the Gamecocks, favored by 1.5 in that one. 3 seed Creighton takes on 14 seed Akron Thursday in Pittsburgh at 1:30. Game will be on TNT, and Creighton favored by 12.5. Then you got your 7 seed Texas Longhorns. They will officially take on the Rams of Colorado State after Colorado State just obliterated Virginia in the play-in game. As we record shortly after the end of that game, Virginia mustered up 14 points in the first half of that game, went nearly an entire hour of real time without scoring a single point. It was even for us who are not super shocked by Virginia, we were pretty shocked by what we saw from Virginia in that one. Regardless, Colorado State carrying some momentum into this game against Texas Thursday in Charlotte, 6:50 Eastern time on TNT. Despite Colorado State's big win, Texas still favored there by 2.5. Closing it out, Tennessee takes on the Peacocks of St. Peter's, the 15 seed, Thursday in Charlotte at 9:20 on TNT. No line for that one. Presumably Vegas is sweating, trying to figure out what to do with another opportunity for St. Peter's to take on a 2-seeded team out of the SEC. Didn't go well for that 2 seed 2 years ago. We'll see what it means for Tennessee this time around. Isaac, what stands out to you here in the final region of our bracket preview episodes?
Well, yeah, I mean, Andy, I think clearly Purdue and the Kevin McCullar side of things are the 2 biggest storylines here. Mm-hmm. For Purdue, it's a twofold thing. Can they pull a Virginia? And can they ride that all the way and break the Big Ten curse that goes all the way back to 2000 in Michigan State, the last time the Big Ten had a national champion? That's a lot of weight to carry on their shoulders. I wouldn't be surprised if they're feeling some of the weight of that, have maybe a little bit of a slow start against either Montana State or Grambling. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, look, they're not going to do this again, Andy. They're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. I mean, maybe when they get to, because Utah State's really good basketball team. So there's some possibilities there, but I expect Purdue to be fine. I think I've said it on our show before. I think if you're someone who not only is doing a bracket, but have some money behind it, I think Purdue could provide some great value because so many people are going to be out on them.
Yeah.
But y'all, this is a different basketball team. They brought in Lance Jones. He's so athletic and great. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, both a year older. Zach Edey's having another banner year. I feel a lot more confident in Purdue this time around than last year. Andy, as for the Kevin McCullar side of it, I looked as you were talking, the line is actually bumped back down to 7.5 now. Not much movement, but a little bit there. And I think that takes me into my favorite matchup, which is where I know we'll go next. Mm-hmm. It was already Kansas and Samford. I feel like I apologize. I'm a broken record at this point. Mm-hmm. I've been so excited for this game. And then obviously Kevin McCullar being out of it dulls the excitement a little bit just because we always talk about, we don't want these guys out and hurt. But I am very interested to see how Kansas holds up as a team that is already not very deep, as a team that is slower, whereas Samford is deep. They play with the, Kansas has what's the number? I looked it up earlier. They are 318th nationally in bench usage. Samford is third.
Wow.
Kansas, a lot slower. Samford is 14th in adjusted tempo. And so when you think about those speed things and lack of depth things and the way Samford plays and attacks and presses, that could spell some real trouble for Bill Self's team.
The matchup I want to talk about is South Carolina and Oregon. It's two teams that just aren't traditionally basketball schools. You don't really think about them from the basketball perspective, and yet that's the matchup we get here, 6 seed versus an 11 seed. Shout out to Lamont Paris, AP Coach of the Year, and for phenomenal reason. He was his team, the Gamecocks, were projected to finish dead last in the SEC. Instead, they finished tied for second. They get a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, Oregon didn't quite exactly have that level of success in the regular season, but they did what they needed to do. They won the Pac-12 tournament. Dana Altman potentially saved his job a little bit by winning this game here and putting himself in the big dance. 6 versus an 11. I think it's an intriguing matchup here. N'Faly Dante, big man for Oregon, is a load. Really tough to handle. I'm curious how South Carolina will make that work for them, but excited about this matchup between two teams that, frankly, at the beginning of the year, and even partway through the year, I don't think either of us thought we're going to be here.
Andy, another conversation, just like we did with the South bracket, is sleepers. Let me just have you keep going on this. Who is your sleeper out of this Midwest region?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gonzaga. I mean, I think you're talking about a 5 seed here. It's not exactly like a deep sleeper necessarily, but I really like the draw that Gonzaga got here. For starters, we didn't expect to see them on the 5 line. Most projections had them as a 7, maybe a 6 seed. They end up getting a 5 seed. And I think McNeese is a good 12 seeded team, but I don't love the matchup for McNeese.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the things that they do well just are not going to work as well against Gonzaga. They press, but Gonzaga's been very good at breaking the press. McNeese is not a very good defensive team when the other team is in their half-court offense. Gonzaga is one of the most efficient half-court offenses in the country and has been for a decade. McNeese gives up a lot of three-point shots. Gonzaga is not a great three-point shooting team, but if you let them shoot better than they normally do, nobody has beaten them when they do that. So I just don't love this matchup for McNeese all that much. I like it a lot more for Gonzaga. And then if Gonzaga does advance, they either play Samford, which is an intriguing matchup, both very high-tempo teams. I'd be interested in that one. Or they play a Kansas team without Kevin McCullar. Either way, I think you kind of like the Gonzaga's odds to potentially – they've made the Sweet 16 9 years in a row. I think this is a pretty good chance, despite being a lower seed, despite a lot of the national media picking them to lose in the first round. I think there's a pretty good chance that Gonzaga makes it 10 years in a row. And if we're being honest, they had a 5-point lead the last time they played Purdue earlier this year. It is not crazy to think that they could continue to advance beyond that. So that's why I got them as my sleeper. Even though they're a 5 seed, I got them as my sleeper here in this region.
Andy, mine is the 7 seed Texas Longhorns. Obviously, we don't know exactly what it'll look like going against Colorado State. They got to figure that out after Colorado State just won on Tuesday night. But part of this is the experience factor. Andy, we talked about this yesterday as we looked at Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. But Texas is one team that was in the Elite Eight this year that doesn't have to contend with UConn in their bracket. They went to the Elite Eight, quite frankly, should have been the other team in the Final Four instead of Miami had they just not choked down the stretch. Dylan Dessou, who missed that, is going to be so hungry Right now, you've got Max Asmus with all his prior experience from Oral Roberts, and you add to the mix Tyrese Hunter, Dylan Mitchell, Caden Shedrick, who, by the way, is very glad he is not at Virginia anymore after what he witnessed on Tuesday night. You got Brock Cunningham, the hockey enforcer, guaranteed to get, Andy, it's like Brock Cunningham over under half a technical in every game he plays. And so really interested to see how Rodney Terry and his team's experience from last year could play a role and a factor here in this bracket as they move forward.
Player that I want you all to know in this region, Great Osobor from Utah State, the Aggies, Montana State transfer. He followed his coach, Danny Sprinkle, from Montana State to Utah State, had the best season of his career. He didn't put up these kind of numbers at Montana State, but this year for the Aggies, 18 points, 9 boards per game. Utah State, we'll talk about my Sweet 16 a little bit later, but I think there's a chance they do something very, very surprising for a Mountain West school, very surprising indeed. And I think that Great Osobor could be a big part of that.
Andy, that's a great choice. Well done. My player to watch is a young man named Isaiah Stevens, who was on TV on Tuesday night, but you probably missed him because you fell asleep like watching golf on a Sunday afternoon because Virginia was that stinking boring. So if you hadn't seen him, you need to. Isaiah Stevens is one of the best point guards in our entire nation. 16.5 points a game, Andy, seven assists a game, 1.2 steals, 3 rebounds, shoots 44.7% from 3 while attempting 4 a game, shoots 83.6% from the free throw line, and just over 50% from 2. So Andy, just efficient all over the board. He's one of just 6 players in all of Division I to average 7 or more assists, but he's the leading scorer of that group, and he's almost the leader in 3-point percentage from that group. Purdue's Braden Smith, also in this region, is just 0.1 of a percentage point better, but Isaiah Stevens takes more threes, so I'll take that too. This dude is an absolute dude. I know I picked Texas as my sleeper, but I wouldn't mind seeing Isaiah Stevens play a couple games in this tournament either. Okay, Andy, we've talked about the South. We've talked about the Midwest. Will we get any double-digit seeds out of either of these brackets to the Sweet 16? But whether we do or not, who's going to go on to the Final Four? Because upsets early, chalk late. We got all that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode's brought to you by Nissan. Andy, have I ever told you when I met my wife, she drove a Nissan Xterra?
Ooh, there you go. I did not know that.
And I love that thing. She let me drive it one time. I've been a big Nissan fan ever since, and that's why I'm so glad they're one of our sponsors. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our good friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. Andy, we just talked about the Oregon Ducks earlier. They are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. This team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in the Pac-12 tournament, punching their ticket to the big dance. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Ducks have done here. So take the Nissan Rogue or Pathfinder or Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Andy, we've gone through the South and the Midwest. We want to take it all the way. We didn't make game-by-game picks. We did that on our bracket breakdown earlier in the week. Folks, if you haven't seen or listened to that, go check it out. Right now, though, we're going to give you our Sweet 16 up to the Final Four picks. Andy, in the South, take me through your Sweet 16 up to your Final Four pick.
Well, I got Houston, the first team in the Sweet 16, not a real shocker there, although I do have them playing James Madison, the Dukes, not only beating Wisconsin and then playing Duke. I have them, the Dukes, beating Duke, moving to the Sweet 16, taking on Houston there. A lot chalkier on the other side of that region there. Marquette, the 2 seed, taking on Kentucky, the 3 seed. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 12 for my top 4 in the South. Then we can get into the Elite 8. Houston taking on Kentucky, very fun matchup of offense versus defense there. Excited to see Jamal Shed, Antonio Reeves, what that guard battle would be between those two teams. And then in my Final Four, hard to pick against Kelvin, Sampson, and the Coogs. That team has just been so unbelievably good this year. I know they got waxed by Iowa State to end the Big 12 tournament, but I think Sampson and the Coogs are going to be rolling, and they're going to be in the Final Four.
Absolutely. Andy, for my Sweet 16, the only I got that 1, 2, 3 as well, but I do have Wisconsin going to the Sweet 16 against Houston. Houston and Marquette are your winners there, assuming that Tyler Kolek is good to go, because he is the straw that stirs the drink for the Marquette Golden Eagles. Then in that Elite 8 matchup, healthy Tyler Kolek sitting on the bench. It doesn't matter. Jamal Shed is too much with LJ Cryer and everything they got down in Houston. Kelvin Sampson's team, just like Andy said, is going to the Final Four. And Andy, Jamal Shed, I think without a doubt, has to be the mop coming out of that region if Houston wins. Any different thoughts there?
No, I gotta go Shed. I like when we pick different guys, but it's Jamal Shed is just so good and so important to that Houston team. If Houston's in the Final Four, it's because Jamal Shed dominated throughout the NCAA tournament. Isaac, looking ahead to the Midwest, the final region here for me, I'm going to start this off with a stunner. And we talked about it on the Bracket Breakdown show. I made this pick there. I'm sticking with it here. Once my bracket is in, my bracket is in. It is a 2 seed, a 3 seed, a 5 seed, and an 8 seed in the Sweet 16 out of the Midwest. Utah State, the Aggies. Great Osborne, talked about him earlier. Look, Utah State doesn't have a ton of size, so the ability to slow down Zach Edey definitely going to be a challenge. But hey, there weren't a lot of 7-footers at Fairleigh Dickinson, so it is definitely doable. I think Purdue, as much as I want to see Matt Painter be able to get the monkey off his back, I can see a situation here where that does not come to fruition for them. So I got Utah State taking on Gonzaga. I got Tennessee taking on Creighton in the Sweet 16. I got Gonzaga advancing past Utah State to take on Creighton in the Elite 8 matchup, a Ryan Nembhard battle there, as Nembhard, of course, transferred from Creighton to Gonzaga this year. I do have Creighton, however, getting the W there, going to the Final Four. We'll see if Creighton, if Greg McDermott's team can get there, but that's my pick here. And I got Ryan Kalkbrenner, not necessarily the player most talked about for Creighton, but I think looking at the matchups that they would play, I think for them to make a Final Four, they're going to need Ryan Kalkbrenner to do work defensively, to do work offensively. I think they're not always reliant enough on him. And I think for Creighton to be in the Final Four, it's going to happen because Ryan Kalkbrenner has some big games, and I think he'd be your MOP in this situation.
Feels like we've begged Creighton to play through him all season long, Andy. Maybe now is finally the moment. Okay, Andy, my picks. I am going to ride with Purdue to get there, exercise the demons from last year. Same on the other side, Tennessee and Creighton. But, Andy, I didn't have any double digits in the Sweet 16. Here is my one. The Samford Bulldogs not only upset Kansas, but also McNeese or Gonzaga. I expect it to be Gonzaga as well. Acor versus Graham Ike would be a super fun matchup. We'll like to see what happens there. By the way, I don't think we said it, but great Osibor against Zach Edey. Woo, that'd be fun as well. Anyway, Purdue's obviously, I would have them beating Samford, and then I have Tennessee over Creighton. So Purdue, Tennessee in the Elite 8, with Tennessee being the team to win it and go on to their first ever Final Four. Congrats to Rick Barnes if they get there. And Andy, there's no other way to go. It's got to be Dalton Connect as the region mop if Tennessee's advancing. That's just the way it is. Andy, very quickly, again, congrats to Wagner and to Colorado State, who were Tuesday night's slashy winners. Coming up Wednesday, we got the final 2 slashy games. 16 Grambling versus Montana State, 6:40 True TV, same schedule as Tuesday night was. Montana State favored by 3.5. The winner moves into this Midwest bracket we've just been talking about to face Purdue. And then the other game is Colorado versus Boise State. We mentioned this one earlier for the 10 seed, 9-10 True TV. Buffs favored by 2.5. Winner moves into the South bracket where they will face the number 7 Florida Gators.
Isaac, one more show after this, getting ready for all of the action on Thursday, and then boom, we are in it. So many fantastic games on Thursday, on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. It is going to be nonstop watching that TV till our eyeballs hurt. I cannot wait. It's going to be a fantastic tournament, as it always is. I will be back, of course, on Thursday, getting you even more prep, the final prep for the NCAA tournament for the 16 for getting you ready for the non-play-in games, let's put it that way, as we get into the big meat of that first weekend of college basketball. Thank you so much to those of you who have joined us every single day. We love our everydayers. We love those of you who are with us on the Discord channel. Go click that link in audio, video platforms to come join us there. Thanks again. Apologies to the lawyer family, especially from me, as picking Utah State ahead of them. Let's go Wildcats. And until Thursday, Peace out.